pandemic disease, affects the lungs, has killed thousands, and has a primary symptom of coughing. You're probably thinking, that sounds exactly like COVID-19. Well, you would be correct, but the current pandemic isn't the only respiratory disease that could be lingering in the air around us without us even knowing. Tuberculosis is one of these such diseases that has actually been plaguing the world for centuries. I have always been intrigued by different types of diseases, but tuberculosis in particular has always caught my interest. After reading numerous books, medical journals, and other types of research, I'm going to tell you exactly how tuberculosis is contracted, how it affects an infected individual's body, and how it is treated. First, let's take a look at where it all begins. When a person comes in contact with tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease that is easily passed between individuals. When a person coughs, sneezes, or participates in any activity, such as talking or singing, they emit bacteria into the air through small droplets. This bacteria can pass to nearby individuals or linger in the air and wait for a healthy individual to come along. According to Irene Hasu, author for Pharmaceutical and General Health magazine, The American Druggist, a person becomes infected with tuberculosis when they inhale the bacteria Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Once this bacteria enters the body, it heads towards the lungs. Once it has entered the respiratory system, the person becomes infected with tuberculosis and can now transmit it to other individuals. Now that we know how tuberculosis is contracted, let's take a look at how it affects an infected individual's body. When a person is infected, they can exhibit a variety of symptoms. But before this can happen, the bacteria must begin its work in the lungs. Once the Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria enters the lungs, it begins eating away at the lung tissue. This causes damage to the lungs. After this occurs, the individual can start exhibiting the more visual symptoms of tuberculosis. Most people know the most common symptom, which is coughing, but there are more physical symptoms to tuberculosis than just this. A person can experience fatigue, fever, sweats, weight loss, and chest pains. Even the cough has more serious implications than just a scratchy throat. A person can cough up mucus and blood due to the bacteria eating away the lung tissue in their lungs. Even after someone has been cured of tuberculosis, they can still experience long-term effects. According to Thomas Lynch, who specializes in biopharmaceuticals and medical clinical trials, a person can develop a chronic cough due to damage in the lungs tubes, as well as frequent chest infections for years after their tuberculosis has been cured. So far, we have looked at how tuberculosis is contracted and how it affects an infected individual's body. But how is it treated? After years of research and many deaths, researchers were finally able to find an effective treatment for tuberculosis. The most common and effective treatment for tuberculosis is a series of antibiotic medications. According to the National Health Agency, the CDC, tuberculosis is treated by 4 most common antibiotic medications, which is isoniazid, rifampin, ethambutol, and pyrazinamide. These 4 antibiotics are taken every day for the first 2 months, in which is called the intensive phase. After this intensive phase, isoniazid and rifampin is exclusively taken in what is called the continuation phase for the next 4 to 7 months. The CDC further explains that someone who has been prescribed this regimen should follow it exactly, or they run the risk of developing a drug-resistant form of tuberculosis. But as long as someone follows this regimen, they have a good chance of becoming cured. This is shown in research by the International Health Organization, which is called the World Health Organization, the WHO, has found that globally 36 million individuals have been completely cured of tuberculosis over the last 15 years by following this exact regimen. As you can see, the journey from contracting tuberculosis to being treated is a long and bumpy one. First, someone must come in contact with tuberculosis and inhale the Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria. After this occurs, the bacteria begins eating away at lung tissue, and they start to experience visual symptoms of tuberculosis. After this, they get prescribed a antibiotic regimen that can last from 6 to 9 months. After learning so much about tuberculosis and living through a pandemic, it makes one really begin to wonder what is lingering in the air around us.